Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. It's Wednesday afternoon. It's a hot one in Minnesota, and let's get started with some Duggar news. We have been covering Josh Duggar for a while now. There has been a lot of rumblings that things could be happening in Arkansas, maybe not. There could be something going on with the government and Josh Duggar. It's hard to know. These types of cases take forever, and the public wants answers. The public is frustrated. And then you've got TLC bringing back Counting On. But admittedly, Anna Duggar, his wife, will not be returning. In fact, on Instagram, when someone asked Anna if her birth of Mariella would be featured on the show, and she told fans it would not. So Anna, who has been featured on the show for the last few seasons, apparently is not going to be seen as much this season and was left out of all the promo photos and the trailer. With Counting On coming back, that means we need to start talking about Josh Duggar, because why not, right? But really, this is because yesterday there was some news out of Arkansas. It actually happened on Monday when the 8th District Court of Appeals issued a ruling in a case that Jill Dillard, Jessa Seawald, and her other two sisters, Ginger Voulot and Joy Anna Forsyth, brought against the city of Springdale and the officers who released information about them to In Touch in 2015. So let's fast forward, or actually rewind back to 2015. In 2015, In Touch made a Freedom of Information Act request to Springdale Police Department and requested information into a potential investigation that had gone on back in 2006 related to Josh Duggar. They had received a tip that might be something in the Duggars' past that they were covering up and not revealing. The Duggars, for years prior to this, had been on the TV, all of our TVs, in fact, on Counting On and 19 Kids and Counting. They had been famous for having 1 million kids, Michelle having a lot of children, and being faithful Christian conservatives. Well, this family took things to another level. Their kids were extremely sheltered, homeschooled, as well as these sort of archaic beliefs about, women belong in the kitchen, that kind of thing. I don't want to go into all the deets because you guys know how I feel about the Duggars, but this story is interesting. So back in 2015, In Touch requests some information. They get the report redacted with none of the identifying people there. The only identifying information released at the time were the names of Michelle and Jim Bob Duggar, who were adults, as they were part of this original investigation. All of the identifying information of all of the people involved, minus those two, were redacted. In Touch then was able to put together a piece which became this sensational story, obviously, and it went everywhere, right? Because it was revealed that Josh had done some things that were extremely bad. So Josh did these terrible things, right? And then he ends up telling the police that he did them, and they speak to people that he did these things to, the 4 sisters, and they admit it as well. Or the redacted police report that it was published didn't show their names, but internet sleuths were obviously able to determine who it was because of interviews and things that were released from those reports that basically identified that it was 4 people that were in his home and then 1 unidentified person that was outside of the home. So in this, when it all is said and done, they release all of this information. In Touch effectively ends Josh Duggar's career, who at the time was working as an advocate for this traditional family advocacy group that promoted traditional family values in Washington and was doing lobbying. So Josh was like a high up person in this organization. He was also helping to campaign on the trails of like Mike Huckabee and other prominent Republican candidates. He lost his career and he was forced to come back to the land back in Arkansas. And it was also shortly thereafter that all the stuff came out about Ashley Madison. So 2015 was a really terrible year for Josh Duggar because all of his secrets were revealed. But it was a good thing because the public was aware of what happened. Sadly, sort of lost in the middle of this was the collateral damage of the girls who were the true people that we should have been protecting. So what happened is that the Duggars, Jim Bob and Michelle, decided that they were going to file a lawsuit against the city of Springdale, the publishers of In Touch, and along with government officials that released the information and then publishing the information at In Touch. So Jill Dillard, Jessa Seawald, Ginger, and Joy all filed a lawsuit in court in Arkansas. They allege that their privacy was violated because this was published, and when this all happened to them, they were children. Over the last several years, as this case has been going on in court, there's been some dismissals, like In Touch is no longer a part of the lawsuit. The larger publishing company was dropped, the writers were dropped, and the city of Springdale was dropped. Now, the last three remaining people that are a part are the three government officials that actually released the information. And this has been the sticking point, is that the girls claim that they were put in a position where information that happened to them that should have been protected was released. And the people that were actually releasing the information say that they actually followed all the protocols of the government at the time and redacted all of the information that was required by law, and that they released the information under the Freedom of Information Act, and because they followed protocol and policies, they couldn't actually be sued by the girls. So this has been an ongoing case that's gone back and forth between the appeals court and then back to 8th District Court in Arkansas. Over this past winter, there was an appeal by the three government officials that released the information. So they were seeking to get immunity, claiming that they were only following their duties as employees of the police department and the government. And because they were working in an official government capacity, they could not be actually individually sued, and they were requesting that they get immunity. The girls argued that they weren't entitled to immunity, and that went back to the appeals court. So initially, the judge in the 8th District said that they were not allowed to have immunity. Those three people appealed it, and the appeals court actually released their opinion yesterday or Monday, and they decided that those three government officials actually do qualify for qualified immunity, meaning that the appeals court is granting them qualified immunity and claiming that Jill, Jessa, Joy, and Ginger cannot sue them for damages because they were working as government officials. And there's been no precedent established legally that states. So the three employees at the Washington County Sheriff's Office, Ernest Kate, and then a city attorney and a former Springdale police chief, Kathy O'Kelly, they, along with Rick Hoyt, were all granted qualified immunity, and they cannot be actually targeted for damages, according to the federal appeals court. The judges actually had previously denied them this immunity, but then they reheard issues, and that happened in January. So in January, they all came before the court, and they argued why these three would actually receive it. Now, I listened to those arguments, and one of the issues that they came up with was that they were claiming that their information wasn't redacted, and they said that it was redacted. And they said, well, because some parts of it were left out, internet sleuths were able to determine which people were involved in this case. Well, the attorneys during that hearing actually argued that you can't anticipate that internet sleuths would be able to identify pieces of information in terms of making choices for how you set up laws and rules for releasing information related to these types of cases. And they also claimed at the time that they were following protocols in the state by the state of Arkansas, and that because they had followed all of these protocols, that they were working in the government capacity and they were not doing anything to intentionally inflict harm to these people. So ultimately, the judge that wrote the opinion says that they concluded that there was actually no legal precedent that was clearly established that of guaranteeing of a constitutional right to informational privacy. So they claimed, the Duggars, that they brought up a couple cases saying that I have a right as a citizen that my information be private. And the appeals court actually looked for all the different rulings in the government's cases to see if there was a similar case that they could say, okay, you're right. And the appeals court justices came back and said, There's literally nothing here that could tell us that you have this. The court has never ruled in that favor. The court has never claimed that you can have this right. So because there's nobody that has claimed this right, we can't actually give you this. So they're going to send it back to the 8th District Court, where the original judge on the case will then, who's Tim Brooks, will have to take things from here. So what could happen is Judge Brooks could look at everything and say, hey, well, these 3 people have immunity and you can't actually sue them for damages. And because they're the only 3 people left in this case, you can't sue them and this case is dismissed. Or he could completely not agree with the appeals court. This case has literally gone back and forth to appeals over so many different issues. I'm not necessarily sure if this will be the end of it. At the end of the day, it's all going to come down to what Judge Tim Brooks decides to do. So we'll have to see what his choice will be. Now, previously, Josh Duggar had also sued them, but the District Court of Appeals had actually dismissed all of his charges, all of his claims except for one. And so Josh is actually not able to sue anymore because they've had 2 appeals or 1 appeal and he's had it dismissed twice. And there's only one that's left, and that's relates to a civil rights claim, which he could still appeal. But if that gets denied again, he cannot sue. So Josh's claims are almost nearly dead in the water, and it seems that the girls' claims are almost nearly dead in the water. In the middle of all of this, the thing that sort of upsets me is that the responsibility here should not have been on the girls to file these lawsuits. Obviously, it's in their name, but it should have been their parents who should have protected them during this time. If they knew that this information was out there and they knew what Josh had done and they knew that this investigation had been completed and they were not honest with the network, they were not honest with the public, they can't get angry when a Freedom of Information Act is requested and then public information is released. I agree, it's really sad that information related to the minor children was actually released, but in Josh's case, the court argued that they don't protect people that actually commit these types of crimes. Sadly, the prosecutor in this case decided not to press forward with charges because they claimed that the statute of limitations had actually expired. But I found an old article from USA Today that actually says that the statute of limitations should have been 7 years and not 3, but maybe they took into account that his age was 14 and 15 when all of this occurred, and that could have played a factor for why they didn't move forward. Now, that doesn't mean that someone couldn't still come forward today and make claims against him and a new investigation could start, but in terms of what happened to his sisters, because none of them have actually come forward at this point in time and said anything new has happened, they can't do anything for that case, which actually for a lot stinks. And because of the statute of limitations that are in this country, which are very inconsistent, so many of these types of crimes are never prosecuted. The girls now are living not because of what these government officials did, in my opinion, but they're living with the consequences, in my opinion, of what their parents did. Their parents made a choice to seek fame and to seek riches by putting their family online, by placing their vulnerable children in a position where they had to be online and on TV, regardless of what was in their past. And because of public interest and because of the constant rumblings that this family was covering up for Josh, it eventually came out. The wider community in Arkansas had known what he had done for years. His church knew about what he had done. So when everyone knows your secret and you're pretending it doesn't exist, it doesn't mean you can hide it. And then filing a lawsuit because it becomes public, it almost seems like these girls have been put through more by the government, by their parents. There's so many times when I just want to give this family the benefit of doubt and be like, you're just making mistakes. You're just making mistakes. But every single turn, I'm like, Jim, what are you doing? Why are you doing this to your kids? Why are you doing this to your family? Just hang it up. Put your kids out. Don't do this to them. Like literally. Stop. And why does TLC still have them on the air? I'm still totally confused by this. These are just my rants, completely unrelated. But what do you think about this? I know that some of you think it's really atrocious that this information did come out about the girls. And I agree, like it's really sad that they have been brought through this. And it's really sad that it continues to be in the news. But at the same time, it's literally a court case. But then Do you blame the government officials for doing the protocol and following their jobs, or do you blame the parents for putting them in a position where they were literally knowing what they were doing when they put themselves on TV and then just wanted people to not find out? Who really is to blame? Jim Bob actually didn't report everything either in 2002 and 2003. The original police report said he never filed any sort of claims when he first found out in 2002, and then when one of his daughters came forward and told him, and then he again didn't do anything until 2003, and he still didn't report it to the police. He went to an off-duty officer who is now in prison for similar offenses. It just makes me wonder, like, why weren't charges ever filed against Jim Bob for not protecting his kids? Tell me what your thoughts are in the comments below. Bye, guys.